All right, you're welcome. And if you've just joined us, you're watching Politics Today at this period when the nation is holding, the entire country is actually holding its breath. We're waiting for the outcome of the meeting that is happening right about now in Abuja, State House to be precise, where President Goodluck Jonathan is meeting with the governors and some ministers over the issue of subsidy. So that's the latest, and that's what we're discussing tonight on the program. Well, you may be wondering what subsidy has got to do with politics. I'll tell you, it has everything to do with it. So the latest information is that the president of the country is meeting with the governors, well, maybe not all of them, but some of the governors and some members of the Federal Executive Council. We're waiting for the outcome of that meeting. What we've been told is that after that meeting, it's very likely the president will address the country at 9 p.m. We're not so very sure. We're not absolutely sure, but that's what we've been told. We're waiting for the outcome of that meeting. And Labour, we understand, is also holding a last-minute meeting as well. So both sides holding meetings, and we're waiting for what they're going to come up with. But there's just no question at all that everybody is anxiously waiting for some kind of information, something to resolve this crisis, the impasse we've witnessed over the past 1 week. And do not forget, just before this period, earlier in the day, Labour, the meeting they had yesterday, that was Saturday, that meeting yielded nothing at all. Labour came out with a statement that the strike was going to continue. I'm just going to read a portion of what Labour actually said. Let me read this. It says, the talks between the federal government and Labour, represented by the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and Trade Union Congress in Abuja on Saturday, 14 January 2012, stalled due to differences on the methodology in finding a solution to the crisis. Now, the key word there, methodology in finding solution to the crisis, that it goes on to say Labour's analysis of the situation is that tension is very high in the land following the fuel price increase and the resultant strikes, rallies, and street protests, and the human casualties that have followed, and that a suspension of the new petrol prices will reduce tension and return the country to normalcy. That's the position of Labour. But let me read something that you may consider very important in Labour's speech. It says, we decided to make a plea to President Goodluck Jonathan on the overriding interest of the country to suspend the PMS, that's the petrol price increases, and direct that talks between government and Labour be concluded on the petroleum industry, especially as it affects fuel subsidy and pricing within a short time. Adding that the summary of Labour's position at the meeting was that talks and consultations were still ongoing before government aborted them by announcing the 120 to 220% increase in the price of fuel, and that it is necessary to return to the status quo in order to douse tension, return the country to normalcy, and allow for conducive atmosphere for consultation and talks. It says, however, that government's only offer was to reduce the new prices while declining to allow a phased price increase. So if Labour is now saying, well, that what the government declined, what the government refused to do was, what the government was actually offering was just a reduction in fuel prices, but that government was not accepting a phased increase in prices, it tells you that, well, Labour is actually considering some kind of phased increase in prices. But for now, Labour wants the price of petrol to go back to 65 naira. We don't know if any agreement has actually been struck. They're still meeting. And if the president is going to address the country at 9 p.m., we'll wait and listen to what the president would have to say. But for now, the talks are still ongoing, and we're waiting. We have our correspondents there. They're waiting. As soon as they get, information, you will be the first to know. But still talking about the issue of subsidy and looking at the way forward, because that's what we've been doing over the past few days now, and it's a good thing that both sides are now beginning, it appears this whole thing is coming to a conclusion. So even when everything is resolved, the problem still remains. What next? What happens next? What should follow? I mean, we've had several suggestions over the past couple of days, people talking about the need to cut down on the cost of running government. There have been several suggestions, and so there just can be no end to suggestions, and that's why tonight we're also looking at suggestions as well. And joining me on the program, I have Captain. He's a retired Navy captain, Captain Labin That's Dada Labinjo, who is a maritime expert. He's also an indigenous ship owner, and he's been in the maritime industry for a very long time now. He's also a lawyer. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
I also have Mr. Wale Ogunade, who is also a lawyer and has been actively involved in the strikes and protests that have been taking place over the past few days in Nigeria. And joining us from Abuja, we have a former member of the House of Representatives. As a matter of fact, he chaired the House Committee on Petroleum Resources Upstream. That's Mr. Tam Brisby. Thank you very much all for joining us. Let me start with you, Mr. Brisby. You chaired the upstream sector, that's the petroleum sector in the House of Representatives when you were there. Could you just, as a way of finding a solution to all of this, that even when there's an agreement, you know, at the end of today's meeting, there's an agreement and the strikes and protests end, we're looking at the way forward. Tell us what exactly the problem is with our petroleum sector that we need to address.
Well, there are a number of problems with the petroleum sector. One of the problems is that at the moment, the framework we should have to have a proper petroleum sector, both upstream and downstream, is not available. There are a lot of things that we certainly need to take a look at to maximize this product that we have in the country. One of the things that we definitely need to take a look at is the enabling environment. If you're talking about the upstream sector, for instance, the last time we updated the laws that affect the upstream petroleum sector was over 15, 20 years ago, at the very least. In terms of the downstream sector, we're all complaining right now about the fact that we do not and are not producing enough petroleum products within our country. What is the problem and why are we not doing this? In my opinion, one of the things we have to look at seriously if we are going to effectively maximize the benefits of the products that we have been given is to take a look again at the environment in which the downstream petroleum sector is operating. Take a look at the laws, take a look at those factors that are mitigating against maximizing these benefits, like I said, and begin to deal with them. A lot of it has to do with the laws that we have in the country. And right now, in terms of petroleum downstream and the issues we're talking about at the moment, a major factor that is holding us back is whether we should deregulate the downstream sector of the petroleum industry or leave it as a regulated sector. This is a decision we have to take, and we have to take very quickly if we want to make progress in the downstream sector. I've talked about the upstream sector. Enabling laws are inadequate. Enabling laws have to be updated. We have to sit down and take a look at all of these. In terms of the upstream sector, the petroleum industry bill, which has been on the drawing board for a number of years, has to be faced by the executive and the National Assembly to give us a document that we can work with. Those, in my opinion, are some of the issues we really have to take a look at in ensuring that we move forward in our petroleum sector.
All right, I'm going to come back to you so that you'll get down to specifics. You talk about those things now that are not that are preventing us from moving forward. So I'll come back to you, but let me come back. Let me come to you, Captain Dada. Give us, I know there's this maritime element to all of this. You are a maritime expert. Give us the maritime element to all of this, because, you know, we hear these products are supposed to, you know, the products are supposed to be ferried into this country. Yeah, well, ships spend so long a time. We understand ships spend, ships spend very long time on the seas. They attract demurrage and all of that. And just give us the maritime element to all of this.
Thank you, Deji. Firstly, let me clear this point, and I want to make it very, very clear to all. Maritime is about commerce. Maritime has gone beyond mere transportation. It is about commerce. So each time we talk about maritime industry, you are talking about the whole gamut of industry. Concerning why we are not moving forward, very simple. The issue of the corruption, which those perpetrating the corruption do not want it exposed. Unfortunately for them, the government has put in place a Cabotage Act, which means all domestic trading by the coast should be done by Nigerians. It's a monopolistic policy.
I know one of the issues, or one of the elements now built into this, one of the reasons why we've been told that we spend so much and that why we have to pay so much for petrol is because the cost of transporting refined products from overseas or wherever they are refined to Nigeria, it's quite high, and the cost of transporting these products to those refineries quite high. Give us an idea of in terms of cost now what we are spending each time. For instance, we send crude oil to these refineries abroad, and then we bring back the refined products.
First and foremost, when you are sending crude oil for refining outside Nigeria, which they do now, they do not engage any of the Nigerian ship owners. So it is done basically by the foreigners.
Is it because it's cheaper?
No, it's not cheaper. It's not because it is cheaper. It's because of this corruption thing that we are hiding. There is nothing about shipping petroleum product by Nigerians to wherever and to bring it back. That is one. We have the capacity to do it. We have the capacity to do it in-house in Nigeria. We do. Secondly, the byproducts also from those from the refined crude. There are so many byproducts from the refined crude, we don't get the benefit. So we also lose that. And talking about in terms of figures, it's about $2.50 per barrel for the export of this crude oil. So if you send 435 or 445, which is the domestic consumption, you know what that comes to. That is you're talking about 445,000 times 2.5, and it gives you something in excess of 1 billion. You understand what I'm saying? No, in excess of 100 something. I didn't do the calculation, but you can do that. Now, you take it out, you also bring it in. You can get your Nigerians involved. For every time you use a foreign ship, you are putting 25 Nigerians out of business, out of job, out of employment. 25 seafarer minimum. So, get Nigerian.
Does it save cost?
If we use Nigeria, of course, it will save cost if you use your ship, if you use your Nigerian flag ship, because you are not then outsourcing. You are not then putting some Filipinos, some Indians in business. You are putting Nigerians in business. The money will be here, the money will be retained here, and employment will be created. There is also the ancillary services that will also go with it. We have told government that this maritime industry can create 5 million jobs.